Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wore a Tax the Rich dress to the Met Gala, and a lot of people apparently lost their minds. So I'm going to get into the controversy over this dress, both sides of this discussion, and where I fall in all this. But before I get to any of that, first let me just briefly discuss the Met Gala. So this is an annual event, often referred to as the Super Bowl of fashion events, where a lot of celebrities show up. It's 30 grand a ticket to attend this, and it's for the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. So that's the whole thing here. And AOC did not pay 30 grand to show up. She was invited to the event. But let me start with that, of course, the dress. So here is the dress. Tax the rich. All right. She says here, saying the medium is the message. Proud to work with Aurora James as a sustainably focused Black woman immigrant designer who went from starting her dream Brother Vellies at a flea market in Brooklyn to winning the CFDA against all odds, and then worked together to kick open the doors at the Met. The time is now for childcare, healthcare, and climate action for all. Tax the rich. And she followed it up with this tweet saying, before haters get wild flying off the handle, New York elected officials are routinely invited to and attend the Met due to our responsibilities in overseeing and supporting the city's cultural institutions for the public. I was one of several in attendance in this evening. All right. Now, before I get to anything, I'll have criticisms as well as, you'll see my position in a second here. But I want to say before I get into any of this, there are conservatives out there that are criticizing this dress. I couldn't care less. I'm not addressing them, like people like Ben Shapiro that are criticizing her over this. He doesn't care about wealth and equality. Why should anybody care at all what conservatives think about this dress? Who cares? And then there are wealthy liberals. I'll get to an example here. Waleed Shahid tweeted this out from these set of tweets from Vanessa Friedman, who is the fashion editor at the New York Times, saying here, Karen Maloney gets my Met Gala votes. As you see here, she's wearing an equal rights for women dress here. But interestingly, she then goes on to criticize AOC. So saying here, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez attending the $35,000 a ticket Met Gala in a Brother Vellies gown, blaring tax the rich is a complicated proposition. And then this one here, to all the people claiming AOC got a free ticket to the Met Gala just because she did not pay for it does not mean it is free. Someone paid $35,000 for her to attend. It just seems she might have wanted that money used for something other than an elite party ticket. That money goes to the arts. And we can have a deeper discussion about how that shouldn't be the way the arts are funded, but that's a whole other discussion. But the idea of, supporting this message, equal rights, but then when you get to discussing taxing the rich, all of a sudden, some rich liberals are bothered by this. Interesting. So I don't care about the rich liberal perspective on this either. I care about what people on the left are saying. So let's start off with some criticisms of this. So Elizabeth Brunig here, who's a socialist writer for, I think, the New York Times now, was Washington Post, or is Washington. Now it's the Atlantic. Who knows? But Elizabeth Brunig, socialist writer, here tweeting out saying, I'm sorry, man, I can't help myself here. I'm a creature of principle. Met Gala is cringe as F for the same reason Obama birthday party was. Can rich people party elsewhere or privately or with some semblance of shame until ICUs are seeing patients at a pre-pandemic rate? I think this is a fair criticism of the Met in general, or the Met Gala in general. I think nothing wrong with this criticism. It's not clear if this is directed towards AOC's attendance or not, but yeah, the whole event obviously is a bit cringe. Next reaction here from Hassan. I don't personally care that AOC went to the Met Gala. Most of us would love to hang out with cool, famous people, not the effing weird ones. But it is a catastrophic PR failure as a congressperson, especially one that does decent work otherwise, both for mutual aid and in Congress. So I don't really know who this is directed at. Catastrophic PR failure for, I guess, some people in left Twitter spaces, clearly, if you go over some of the reactions. But apart from that, it's no more of a PR failure than playing a video game with the top Twitch streamer. So I don't really understand that. But let me get to one last criticism here. Dr. Heemdout tweeted out the main issue with AOC's dress. The top is white, but the bottom is like eggshell white. The two have a weird contrast. Would have been better without the poof at the bottom. Good point. I think this is the best criticism yet. But obviously, all right, he's joking there. But let me start with this. So This happened 2 years ago. Historian berates billionaires at Davos over tax avoidance. Rucker Bregman tells panel that the real issue is the rich not paying their fair share. So Rucker Bregman shows up to an event in Davos with a lot of wealthy people, criticizes them, saying they need to pay more in taxes. He gets universal praise. If you go back and search Rucker Bregman's name, and anybody that's criticizing AOC right now over this, you will likely see that they complimented him for doing this. But AOC goes to a event with a bunch of wealthy people, says tax the rich, and she gets criticized. Now, I'm not saying it's a sexist issue. Maybe it is. I don't know if it is. But clearly, there's a weird double standard here. Now, in neither case, just to be clear, Rucker Bregman did not solve wealth inequality by doing this. AOC is not solving wealth inequality by showing up to the Met Gala with a tax the rich dress. But both are symbols that have a cultural impact. Now, we can argue the extent of that impact, but that's kind of the point of this, is to make a statement. That's what Rucker Bregman did. That's what AOC did. So anybody, just to be clear here on some of the general criticisms coming out. Yes, polling shows a majority of the public already agrees that we should tax the wealthy more. So we can get into that discussion about how much does an example or a statement like this, or what AOC did, how much does that actually mainstream taxing the wealthy if it's already popular? No, the dress is not going to directly lead to a wealth tax, just to be clear. And no, one congressperson can't single-handedly institute a wealth tax or tax the wealthy more. That is not how Congress works. So we have to be clear about the limitations of a symbolic gesture like this. And that's what it is, a symbolic gesture. But I just find it weird. He was not criticized. He was universally praised, and AOC is being criticized. So now let's get to my perspective, which I think at this point is obvious, that I don't think this is a big deal. I tweeted out here, mainstreaming tax the rich is a good idea. Now, to be clear, again, yes, taxing the rich has a majority of support. So mainstreaming in the general sense, yes, the dress is not doing that. My point here was that fashion magazines, entertainment news, does not normally discuss policy, especially taxing the rich. So if it gets them to have to discuss tax the rich even for one segment, then that's a net positive. So, which gets again to what matters in all of this. What is the impact of this action? The impact, if there is any, is that it's forcing fashion magazines and entertainment magazines and shows to discuss taxing the rich, even for a second. That's likely the extent of the impact. So bringing that conversation into those circles, I think, is a positive. This is why it's amazing to me that this blew out of proportion, that this became a huge story, because I just don't see what the big deal is either way. But some other criticisms here. So this was a reply to my tweet saying that about mainstreaming tax the rich. Adam Johnson here replied saying, I mean, a lot of AOC contempt is unhinged and misplaced, but come on, Bill Gates, Mark Cuban, George Soros, Abigail Disney, Warren Buffett say tax the rich all the time. It's not a subversive statement in the least. It's extremely mainstream and uncontroversial. And I agree. I never claimed that it was edgy, that it was doing anything that is, out of the ordinary, at least in the sense that how the general public feels about taxing the rich. But it's bringing that conversation into a different space with a bunch of wealthy people and having fashion magazines and entertainment magazines and shows cover that. All right, let's get to some more of the positive reactions in all this. So Beline Sissa tweets out here, and apologies if I say the name wrong, I'm sure I did, but says here, say what you want, but AOC used an opportunity to start a conversation amongst people who normally wouldn't talk about income inequality. I've seen more mainstream entertainment outlets and women's mags say tax the rich in the past hour than ever before. Mike from PA tweets out here saying, so many leftists want to be in a marginalized subculture and hate to see one of their own gaining cultural power. AOC wearing a dress to a fundraiser for her local art museum isn't selling out the left. Please, I beg you to talk to one normie this year. I think Mike makes a great point here. This is what I notice a lot of. Like when AOC had, when CNN had an hour with AOC interviewing her and discussing, her rise into being a congressperson, some people online were in left circles were criticizing her because they were claiming that now that CNN did a show about her, that she somehow has lost her power or lost her way. No, that's her getting mainstreamed. That's her gaining power. Once she becomes part of the general conversation around politics, that is a positive because she still holds these progressive positions. So to criticize, the mainstreaming or the growing popularity of some of these slogans like tax the rich, to criticize that, I just find it to be really odd. I mean, ultimately, what is your goal here? Is your goal to convince people that these are good ideas? Then if so, you need to mainstream them, and we need to be talking about them more in circles that don't normally talk about them, like entertainment shows. Tedder here tweets out saying, just an anecdotal cap on the subject because it's not my intention to argue, just offer perspective. My boomer family/friends that aren't online have begun listening to AOC. I've never heard them talk about Medicare for all, free college, etc. favorably until she brought it up. Now they do. And this is the impact of having someone like AOC become more mainstream, become more popular, is these ideas that she espouses also become more popular and discussed are discussed further. Two last things here. Aria Bloomsayer tweets out, AOC breaks the internet yet again. We need messaging like this. Billionaires should be made uncomfortable in every space they're in until they are actually contributing to society. So even if you want to say this stress has no impact at all on I don't know, entertainment media, fashion media, on people that read that stuff, at the very least, I'm sure it made some wealthy people there a little uncomfortable. And is that bad? I would say no. So looking at this entire thing, what is the actual, is there a negative impact of this dress and the appearance at the Met Gala? I don't think so. I don't see what the negative impact is, except maybe on her personally and how she's viewed by some people on the left. That is the only negative impact. But in terms of the larger impact, the mainstream impact, it's a net positive. If the only thing you're doing is making people there feel uncomfortable, it's a net positive. Last thing here. This is a criticism that I think some have made online. I haven't seen direct tweets about this, but I think is a fair criticism. The Met Gala, multiple arrests made as large crowd of BLM protesters gather outside fashion event. AOC could have been with them outside the event protesting. Maybe even in the same dress. Now, would she have gotten the same press? Yeah, probably. And maybe it would have been a better use of her time. So I think this is if this is your criticism that she should have been there with these protesters instead, I think that's fair. And yeah, I have no issue with that criticism. But ultimately here, none of this matters. Like, it just doesn't matter. But I'm covering this because this became such a large discussion, and it's just amazing to me the kinds of things that blow out of proportion that people talk about. We're going to forget about this in a couple months, this events, this dress. None of this will have any real impact. But at the very least, in the moment, it is forcing fashion magazines, entertainment magazines, I keep saying magazines, but websites, TV shows, it's forcing them to, at the very least, bring up taxing the rich.